When my son Ethan got married, I didn't expect to be seated so far in the back that I couldn't even see the altar properly. I tried not to take it personally. The wedding planner, the venue logistics, or some clerical error. That's what I told myself as I sat there clutching my purse on my lap, while distant relatives I hadn't seen in years whispered hello from a row ahead. Ethan barely looked at me when he and Catherine walked down the aisle as husband and wife. She was smiling, flawless in her designer gown. And I'll admit it, she looked beautiful. They both did. Young, hopeful, ready to begin their lives. I was proud of him, or at least I tried to be. I hadn't told them about the inheritance. After George, my husband, passed unexpectedly from a heart attack last year, I kept it quiet. Everyone assumed we had left behind enough to live decently, but no one knew that George's long-held investments had matured into something else entirely. $45 million, he never flaunted money, and neither do I. Money. And I knew my son, as much as I love him, wasn't ready to handle that kind of wealth, especially not with Catherine in the picture. She was polite when we met. Not warm, not cold. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing, polite in a way that made me feel like a guest in my own family. And maybe I was. She called me Mrs. Hadley for months, even after I told her she could call me Meredith. When she finally did, it came out forced. At the reception, I sat through the toasts, through the speeches from friends and her polished sister, but there was no mention of me, not once, not even a passing thank you for raising Ethan. It stung, but I didn't cry. I smiled, sipped the lukewarm champagne, and waited until the cake was cut before quietly slipping out. No one noticed. 3 days later, Catherine showed up at my door unannounced. I was in the middle of folding laundry and hadn't even brushed my hair yet when the doorbell rang. She stood there holding a bright white envelope and a tray of store-bought lemon bars. "I thought we could have a little catch-up," she said with that soft voice of hers. She smiled wide, too wide. I invited her in, even though I didn't want to. She sat in the living room like she owned the place, complimenting my curtains, glancing around like she was mentally measuring square footage. "I know the wedding was hectic," she began, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, "and we didn't really get a chance to talk properly." I nodded. "It was beautiful, Catherine. Really. Everything looked perfect." "Oh, thank you," she said sweetly. Then her eyes shifted. "Actually, there's something I brought with me today. Just a few documents. Nothing urgent. Just some things for us to go over." She handed me the envelope and smiled again. I took it slowly, trying not to show my nerves. I've dealt with enough paperwork in my life to know the weight of legal documents by feel alone. "What kind of documents?" "Oh, just some paperwork to make sure everything is smooth between you, Ethan, and the estate stuff. Taxes. You know how these things can be." I didn't say anything, just nodded again. She kept talking, her tone light, almost rehearsed. "Ethan and I are planning to invest in a few properties. He told me the house is still under your name, and we thought it would be good to update some of the ownership details so we're prepared, in case anything happens." I didn't miss the way she emphasized, "in case anything happens." I was 70, not ancient. I still drove, still cooked, still paid my own bills, and this was my home. The home George and I bought 36 years ago. I set the envelope on the coffee table. "I'll take a look when I have a moment," I said, keeping my voice even. "It's been a busy week." "Oh, of course, no rush. Just wanted to get ahead of it." She stayed another 10 minutes, chatting about their honeymoon plans, then left with a quick hug that didn't feel genuine. The moment the door shut behind her, I went straight to the kitchen and called Henry, my old neighbor's son who'd become a lawyer a few years back. I told him what happened. He offered to come over the next morning. When Henry arrived, he flipped through the documents while sipping the coffee I made him. He didn't say much until he reached the last page. "You know what this is, right?" he asked, tapping the stack. "I have a feeling, but go ahead." "This isn't just tax paperwork, Meredith. This is a transfer of ownership. If you sign this, you're giving up your house, your savings account access, and assigning Catherine financial power of attorney in case of emergency." I felt like the air left my body. "I knew it," I whispered. I didn't want to believe it." "She's good," Henry said. Professional tone, legal phrasing, all carefully worded to seem harmless. I stared at the papers for a long time after he left. I thought about George, what he would have said. I thought about Ethan, my son, sitting at that wedding reception smiling while his wife planned how to take everything from me. I didn't call them. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I called my banker and started moving everything. I updated my will. I transferred the entirety of George's inheritance into a trust, one that could not be accessed or altered without going through my personal attorney. I left just enough in my checking account to seem normal. 2 days later, Catherine called again. Just wondering if you had a chance to go over the documents. I did, I said, and I've decided not to sign them. She paused. Can I ask why? I'm not comfortable with the contents, I answered simply. They weren't what you said they were. She was quiet. Then finally she let out a little laugh. Oh, Meredith, there's nothing harmful in there. It's just paperwork. Legal protections for all of us. I've made my decision, Catherine. Another pause. Then her voice dropped, still calm but colder. You should be careful what you say no to. Ethan and I are just trying to help. I hung up. That night, I sat in the living room with the TV off, staring at nothing. My own son was letting this happen, or worse, he was part of it. I hadn't spoken to Ethan since the wedding. He hadn't called to check on me, hadn't thanked me for anything, and now I understood why. I hadn't told him about the inheritance, about the $45 million George had left behind. Thank God I didn't. Because now I knew exactly what they were capable of, and I wasn't going to let them take one more thing from me. After I hung up on Catherine, I sat still for a long time, holding the phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone until it faded out. It wasn't shock anymore. It was something colder. Something that had been creeping in since the wedding day when I realized I was just a figure in the background of their lives. Now I knew for sure I was a target. I didn't call Ethan. I didn't need to. If he wasn't involved in this, he would have called by now. But the silence was loud. That told me everything I needed to know. The next morning, I went through my file cabinet and pulled out everything I still had related to the house, my retirement accounts and George's assets. I took it all to Henry's office. He looked through the folders carefully, highlighting a few items that needed to be moved into the trust immediately. His tone stayed calm, but I could tell. He wasn't just reviewing documents. He was trying to protect me without saying the words out loud. We spent the afternoon updating beneficiary designations, closing a few dormant accounts, and filing the trust paperwork. I signed everything without hesitation. George would have done the same. He never liked Ethan's tendency to coast on charm, and he certainly never trusted Catherine, who he once called a little too polished for someone that young. Before I left, Henry gave me a folder of copies and said, "Keep this somewhere safe, and don't leave your mail unattended." That evening, I placed the folder in the lockbox I kept hidden in the back of my linen closet, under old quilts that nobody but me touched. Then I changed the password on my online banking and set alerts for every transaction, no matter how small. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. 2 days later, Ethan finally called. "Hey, Mom," he said casually, like nothing had happened. "Just checking in. Catherine mentioned you were a little confused about some documents she brought over." I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall, listening to him pretend to care. "I wasn't confused," I said. "I read them. Every page." He hesitated. "Okay, but I think there's a misunderstanding. We just wanted to make things easier in case something happened. You know, streamline everything." "Streamline meaning transfer everything into your names?" "It's not like that," he said quickly. "It's just, we thought it would help if things were in order." "I already have things in order," I said. "I've had them in order since before your wedding." Another pause. Then his tone shifted. Less friendly, more focused. "Mom, you're not getting any younger. You live alone. You've never been great with paperwork. I mean, what if something happens and no one knows where anything is?" I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not sadness, disgust. The way he spoke, like I was some frail woman who'd lost her grip on reality. As if I hadn't spent 40 years balancing our household accounts, managing George's hospital benefits, and running every piece of paperwork that ever came through this house. I appreciate your concern, I said, but I'm not signing anything, and I don't need help managing my life. His voice flattened. Catherine was just trying to help. No, she wasn't, and you know it. He didn't respond. Just a click, a sigh then. I think you're being paranoid. I hung up. That night, I pulled out the original set of documents Catherine had left. I flipped through them again, now with a clearer mind. They were precise, cleverly worded, and vague in all the right places. No page had anything that looked outright dangerous. But the way it was structured? Signing it would have meant giving Catherine power of attorney, adding her as a co-owner on the house, and making her a secondary signer on my savings account. All under the excuse of future planning. I photocopied the entire set and mailed a copy to Henry for documentation. Then I put the originals back in the envelope and locked them in the file cabinet, just in case. 2 days later, Catherine showed up again. I hadn't invited her, but she rang the doorbell twice, holding a grocery bag and flashing her best smile when I opened the door. I brought a few things, she said cheerfully. You mentioned last time you were low on butter. I never said that, but I stepped aside and let her in. She unpacked the bag like she lived here, setting a few things in the fridge and chatting as if the last conversation hadn't happened. I watched her carefully. Every movement was deliberate. She was building a performance. Ethan's worried, she said finally. He said you sounded upset on the phone. I was clear, not upset. She smiled politely, tilting her head slightly. I think maybe it's just hard to keep up with everything. I mean, at your age... I didn't let her finish. Do not talk to me like I'm a burden, I said flatly. You came into my home with fraudulent documents. I was kind enough not to report that. Her face changed, just for a second. The smile cracked. Fraudulent? She asked, still trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, I said. That's what it's called when you lie about the nature of legal documents. If I had signed them without understanding, that would have been exploitation, maybe even elder abuse. She stepped back, slowly closing the refrigerator door. You're overreacting. No, I'm not. I've already spoken to my attorney, and everything in my name is now protected. You and Ethan are not on any accounts. You have no access to anything of mine. That's not going to change. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I could see it. The recognition. She had underestimated me. Catherine didn't say much after that. She packed her things quietly and left with a stiff goodbye. The next morning, Henry called. Just got a call from someone at Ethan's office, he said. A mutual acquaintance. Apparently, Ethan's been bragging about a major inheritance change coming his way. He's in for a surprise, I said. I figured as much. Just wanted to keep you in the loop. Thanks, Henry. Keep the trust sealed tight. You got it. I sat by the window for a long time after that. I watched the street, the trees, the mailman walking past. They thought I was alone. They thought I was easy. They thought I was desperate for connection. But I had survived more than either of them knew. And I had no intention of letting my life's work end up in the hands of someone who only saw me as a stepping stone. The next time they came for me, I would be ready. I didn't hear from either of them for nearly a week after that. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visits. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes you pay closer attention. I used those quiet days to double-check everything. I reviewed the trust Henry helped me set up, called the financial institutions to verify the asset transfers had gone through, and made sure all correspondence now came through his office. I also made a point to remove Ethan's name from every document where it had once appeared as an emergency contact. There was no room for doubt anymore. I knew exactly what Catherine had tried to do, and I had every reason to believe Ethan was fully involved. The only question now was how far they were willing to go. That question got answered the following Thursday. It was late afternoon when Ethan showed up at the house. I hadn't seen his name on the caller ID in days, so when I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there alone, I hesitated. But I opened the door. He looked uncomfortable. No jacket. Sleeves rolled up like he wanted to seem casual. Hey, Mom, he said, forcing a smile. Got a minute? I stepped aside. He walked in and looked around the living room like it had changed since he last saw it. It hadn't. I figured it might be better to talk in person, he said, standing by the fireplace. You've been hard to reach. I sat on the edge of the armchair across from him. I've been busy. He nodded like he expected that. Then he took a deep breath. Look, I know Catherine coming by with paperwork like that wasn't ideal. She probably should have waited, but she was just trying to help. We thought maybe if we got things started now, we'd avoid headaches later. You mean after I die? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He blinked. No, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant, be honest, Ethan, I said. You're trying to secure assets now. You didn't want to wait until I passed away. You thought you could push something in front of me while calling it estate planning, and I'd just go along with it. That's not fair, he said quickly. What's not fair is pretending like this was about my well-being when it was really about your financial plans. Ethan exhaled, then ran a hand through his hair. He used to do that when he was little, usually right before lying about something. We're trying to build a future, Mom. We want to buy a house in the city. Catherine has student loans. I've got my work lined up, but things are tight. Honestly, we thought maybe you'd want to help. And you decided that helping meant handing over ownership of my home and giving Catherine control of my accounts? He looked at the floor. I'm not going to argue, I continued. I've already made arrangements. Everything's in a trust. Everything's protected. You and Catherine are not on anything. That's final. He didn't respond. Then his tone changed. You know, he said, looking back up at me, Catherine's been really hurt by the way you're handling this. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. She forged her way into my financial documents and I'm supposed to worry about her feelings? She didn't forge anything. She brought documents for you to look at. Documents she didn't explain properly. Ones she pushed me to sign without a lawyer. That's manipulation, Ethan. That's not how families treat each other. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a few seconds, he didn't speak. Then he crossed his arms. Okay, so what now? You just write us out of everything? Is that the kind of mother you want to be? I stood up. Don't turn this around on me. You made your choices. Now you live with them. He gave a slow nod and headed for the door. But before he opened it, he turned and looked at me. This isn't over, he said. You're acting like you've won something. But this is just you being bitter. No, I said. This is me being careful. After he left, I didn't sit down right away. I walked through the house slowly, checking windows, checking the locks. Nothing had changed, but I felt like something had. His tone, his face. That wasn't the son who used to kiss my cheek before leaving for school. That was someone else. Someone who saw me as an obstacle. 2 days later, Catherine came back. This time she didn't bring lemon bars. She knocked once and waited with her arms crossed, dressed sharply in a blazer and flats like she'd come from work. I didn't want to open the door, but I did. I thought we could talk, she said. I don't think that's a good idea, I replied. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. I just want to clear the air, she said, stepping inside without waiting for me to invite her. She stood in the living room, scanning the space like she was taking inventory. I think you misunderstood my intentions, she said, finally turning to face me. I've always respected you, Meredith. You're independent, smart. We just wanted to make things smoother. You lied to me. I didn't lie, she said quickly. I simplified. I didn't think I had to explain every detail. You mean you didn't want me to notice what you were really doing? Her jaw tightened. You know what? She said. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I assumed you'd want to be part of Ethan's future, but now I see you're more interested in control than legacy. You're right about one thing, I said. I am interested in control. Of my own life, of my own property, of the home I built with my husband. She took a step closer. You're making things harder than they have to be. I didn't respond. You think locking everything away in a trust protects you? She asked, her voice lower now. What happens if something happens to you suddenly? You think your lawyer will care as much as your family would? That's the difference, I said. He's paid to care. You were supposed to do it for free. She stared at me, then smiled, a quiet, hard smile. All right, she said, picking up her purse. If that's the way you want to play this. As she left, she said one more thing. You'll regret this. But I didn't. That evening I had dinner alone. Pasta. Plain. I cleaned the kitchen, locked the doors, turned off the lights. I sat in the living room with a glass of water and stared at the envelope she'd brought the first time. I pulled out the documents again, flipped through them one last time, and then slowly, one by one, fed each page into the shredder. I knew what was coming. They wouldn't let this go quietly, but neither would I. The next time I saw Catherine, she wasn't smiling. She didn't knock either. She walked into my backyard through the side gate, uninvited, while I was out watering my tomato plants. I heard the gate creak and turned just as she came around the corner, arms folded across her chest, sunglasses resting on top of her head like she hadn't just crossed a line. "Nice day," she said. I didn't respond right away. I turned off the hose, letting the water drip into the soil, and stood still, watching her walk closer. "I figured since you haven't answered our calls it'd be easier to talk face to face," she continued. "Using the front door would have been more appropriate." "I didn't come here to be polite," she said, her voice cooler now. "I came here because we need to move forward, and because Ethan's done being patient." I crossed my arms. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we're not going to keep playing this game, Meredith. You made your point. You don't trust us. You think we're trying to take advantage? Fine. But the truth is, this is about your son, your only child, and whether or not you want to leave him anything at all." I looked at her for a long time. She wasn't nervous anymore. She wasn't pretending. The mask had fallen. This was who she really was. "I'm not dead yet," I said. Her expression didn't change. "Not yet. But you're not exactly young. And let's be honest, what's the plan? You're going to sit on all that money until you're in a hospital bed with nobody around you except a lawyer? If that's what it takes to keep it out of your hands, yes." Catherine tilted her head and smiled like she pitied me. "You know, most parents want their children to have more than they did. Better lives, better homes, better chances. Ethan had every chance we could afford to give him. He had a stable home, college paid for, a car when he graduated. What he didn't learn was how to earn anything for himself." She stepped forward. "You think you're punishing us, but you're just isolating yourself. Ethan doesn't even want to come around anymore. He said to me yesterday, 'I don't even recognize my mother anymore.' That stung, more than I wanted to admit, but I didn't flinch. Then maybe he never really knew me." She shook her head. "We're offering to include you, Meredith. Ethan wanted to give you peace of mind. Make sure everything was in order." "No," I said flatly. "You wanted access. You wanted control. That's all this has ever been about." There was a long silence. Then Catherine pulled a folded paper from her bag. "This is a revised version," she said, holding it out. Cleaner. No power of attorney, no financial access. Just a clause giving Ethan co-ownership of the house and a standard family agreement. I didn't take it. "You're wasting your time. Read it," she insisted. "You'll see it's fair." I took it from her hand, but I didn't open it. I stared at the folded page for a moment, then turned and walked back into the house. I left the door open behind me. Catherine followed. I walked into the kitchen and placed the document on the table. I pulled out a chair, sat down, and looked up at her. "Sit," I said. She did. I opened the paper and read through it line by line. It was clean. Like she said. No obvious grabs, no signature traps, just vague phrasing around shared interest, property rights, and a new paragraph titled Generational Stability. Subtle, but not subtle enough. "This still gives Ethan the legal right to sell this house if I pass away without revising the deed," I said calmly. She blinked. "It's just standard language. It's not standard for someone who isn't on the mortgage, or the title, or the utility bill." Catherine sat back, arms crossed. "You're impossible." "No," I said. "I'm informed." She stood up, snatched the paper from the table, and shoved it back into her bag. "I don't expect Ethan to keep waiting. There's only so much disrespect he'll take." "You mean there's only so long he's willing to act like a son without seeing a payout?" She didn't reply. As she walked to the door, I followed her, but stopped just before the threshold. "Tell Ethan something for me." She turned back. "Tell him I already moved everything. Every asset, every account, every property. It's done. The trust is sealed and the lawyer is listed as the only secondary contact. Nothing is in my name anymore." Catherine froze. What? She said, the color draining from her face. You heard me. There's nothing left to fight over. You can't do that. I already did. She stared at me, mouth slightly open, like she hadn't prepared for that possibility. I saw something shift behind her eyes, panic maybe, or maybe just the realization that her plan had failed. You'll regret this, she said again, quieter this time. I nodded slowly. Maybe, but not today. She left without another word. I closed the door, locked it, and sat back down at the kitchen table. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't scared. I was just tired. Later that night, I called Henry again and told him everything. I told him about the new visit, the revised document, the threats. He didn't seem surprised. They're testing you, he said, seeing how far they can push. I think they're done pushing, I said. I wouldn't count on it, but at least now you're protected. That trust is airtight. They'd need a court order to touch it, and that would take years. You're covered. I thanked him and hung up. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I was mourning something. Not the money, not even the house, but the last thread of belief I had in my son. I kept thinking back to when Ethan was a teenager, when he broke his arm skateboarding and cried all the way to the hospital, and I held his hand through the entire drive. When he got into college and I spent a week sewing up the holes in his old shirts so he'd have enough to wear. When he called me after his first job interview, nervous and excited, asking me to rehearse his answers again. Now he was gone, replaced by someone I didn't know. And I didn't know if I'd ever get the old Ethan back. I didn't expect Catherine to show up again, not after the way she'd left, but she did. This time, it was a letter, not handwritten, not even addressed with care, just a plain envelope slipped under my door in the middle of the night. I found it the next morning, stepped on it barefoot on my way to the kitchen. I opened it at the table, my coffee half full and still hot. No greeting, no sign-off, just a printed message from a free legal template, barely modified. It was a formal request for reconsideration regarding the estate, phrased like a polite appeal. But every line was designed to pressure. It implied I was unwell, that my emotional state may have clouded recent financial decisions, and that Ethan and Catherine were simply seeking fair participation in family assets to avoid future legal complications. I read it twice, then I fed it into the shredder. By then, I had grown used to the routine. A call from an unknown number once a day, a text message every 2 or 3 days from Ethan, alternating between soft apologies and subtle jabs. We still love you, but this has gone too far. Or, you've let your bitterness get the better of you, Mom. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded everything to Henry and kept screenshots in a folder labeled Pressure Attempts. 3 days later, I was in the grocery store when I ran into Marianne Pickens, one of the women from my old bridge group. She looked surprised to see me, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the question she asked while reaching for a carton of eggs. Meredith, dear, is everything all right with you and Ethan? I saw something on Facebook. Catherine posted a quote about betrayal in families. I just assumed it had to do with you. I paused, smiled politely and said, things are private right now. She nodded quickly, embarrassed, but I could feel it. Catherine was trying to spin the story. When I got home, I checked Facebook. I hadn't logged in weeks. Sure enough, there it was, Catherine's public post from the night before, a picture of her and Ethan at a winery, and beneath it, a long caption. Sometimes the people you love the most turn their back on you. Sometimes they hoard things that should be shared. But love and integrity will always win in the end. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, people writing things like, stay strong, and families can be so unfair. She was building a narrative. One where I was the selfish one, the cold-hearted mother cutting out her only son. It made me angry, but not in the way I expected. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted them out of my life entirely. That same evening, I made a final decision. I sat down and rewrote my will, again. This time, I removed Ethan completely. I left everything to charity and structured the remainder of the trust to fund long-term scholarships for students from low-income families, in George's name. Henry had a contact with a reputable education foundation, and by the next morning, we had the legal paperwork drafted. Ethan and Catherine would never touch a dime of George's money, not even by accident. The silence lasted 3 more days. Then, just when I thought maybe they'd finally given up, I got the knock. It was Ethan. I could see him through the peephole, hands in his pockets, looking tired, older, not like my son used to look. But I opened the door anyway. "Can I come in?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. He walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the sofa, elbows on his knees. He didn't look around the house this time. He didn't try to charm me. He just sat there. "I'm sorry," he said, finally. "For what?" I asked, standing. "For all of it." He didn't elaborate. He didn't defend himself. I waited, but he didn't say anything else. I walked over and sat across from him, watching him closely. "Why are you really here?" He looked up. "Because it's over. Catherine filed for divorce." I didn't react. I don't think I even blinked. "She said I failed her, that I couldn't follow through, that I let you manipulate the situation. She moved out 3 days ago." I waited. "She took my savings. She told people I was unstable. She even told her boss I tried to forge your signature." "She wasn't lying," I said quietly. He looked at me. "You think I knew everything she was doing?" "Yes," I said. "Maybe not at first. Maybe not every detail. But you let her do it. You watched it happen." He didn't argue. "I thought we needed the money," he said after a pause. "I thought we deserved it. I don't know what I thought. That I was an obstacle," I replied. "I guess." He rubbed his hands together. "I ruined everything." I said nothing. He looked up. "Is it too late?" "For what? For us?" That question hung in the air. I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't the same Ethan from 5 years ago. He wasn't even the Ethan from the wedding. He looked like someone who had finally realized what he'd lost. "I don't know," I said. "But the money is gone. That part is not coming back." "I'm not here for money," he said quickly. "I know," I interrupted. "But that's the problem. You didn't come here for love either. Not before. You came for control. And that's why we are where we are." He nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't offer excuses. "I wanted to tell you," I said after a long silence, "that I've made other arrangements. You're no longer in the will. Nothing in this house or in George's trust will ever go to you." He looked down. He nodded again. "I understand. Do you?" I asked. "Yes, and I'm not going to fight it. I came to say sorry, not to negotiate." I stood up. "I need time," I said. He stood too. "I'll give it to you." He walked to the door, opened it, then stopped. "She fooled me too," he said quietly. "I thought she loved me. She loved what you could give her." He nodded once, then left. I closed the door, locked it, and sat down. There were no tears, no sense of victory, just a strange calm. They were out of my life. The damage was done. But I had stopped it from getting worse. The money was safe. The house was mine. And I had protected the legacy George and I built from the people who tried to tear it down. 3 weeks passed after Ethan's visit. He didn't call. He didn't stop by. There were no letters, no messages, no attempts to check in. For the first time in months, things were quiet again. Not the type of silence filled with tension, but a clean, settled kind. The kind that comes after you've made a decision, and there's no more discussion to be had. I spent my days sticking to routine. I cooked simple meals. I watered the garden every morning. I went to the post office on Tuesdays, the grocery store on Fridays. I attended a local community meeting on senior housing initiatives, something George would have liked. And most of all, I kept to myself. Not because I was angry, but because I was done trying to fix things that never worked in the first place. Henry came by one afternoon with an envelope in hand. I poured coffee while he sat at the table flipping through a packet. "This is it," he said, sliding the pages over. "The Scholarship Foundation is officially filed. It's live." I nodded. The name at the top of the document was printed clearly, the George Hadley Opportunity Fund. It felt right. After everything that happened, that money was finally going somewhere it belonged. "No loopholes?" I asked. "None," Henry confirmed. "Trust is permanent. The board is fully independent. No relatives can access the capital. Even if Ethan tried to appeal in probate court, he wouldn't get past the first hearing. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. It was done. We drank coffee and talked for another 10 minutes before he left. As I walked him out, he turned and said, "You did the right thing, Meredith, even if it didn't feel good." "I know," I said. "It's not about what feels good. It's about what's safe." That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The phone didn't ring. No one knocked on the door. No alarms, no letters, no pressure, just sleep. The next morning, I woke up and decided to go to the market across town, the one I hadn't visited since before Ethan's wedding. It wasn't a big deal, just something different. I picked up fresh produce, a small bundle of sunflowers, and a new dish towel with a silly chicken printed on it. The cashier told me the total, and I paid in cash like I always do. Simple. As I walked back to my car, I heard someone call my name. I turned and saw Catherine. She looked different, pale, thinner, her hair tied back messily. She was standing by the bus stop, holding a tote bag and a half-finished drink. For a second, I thought she might just nod and keep walking, but she stepped toward me. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. I could say the same. She glanced around, then folded her arms. "I heard Ethan came to see you." "He did." Her mouth tightened. "He told me you erased him from everything." I didn't answer. "He deserved that, I guess," she said. "But I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." "I warned both of you," I replied. "You chose not to believe me." There was a long pause. Catherine's eyes dropped to the ground. "I lost everything," she said. "My job, my apartment, him. I'm living with a friend. Can barely cover rent." "I'm not responsible for your choices," I said. She looked up again. "I know, but I guess I just wanted to say, I didn't think you'd fight back." I didn't move. "I thought you'd fold," she added, "that you'd just give in like most people do." "I've lived long enough to know that giving in never helps." She nodded once, then looked down the road. Her bus was pulling up. "I won't bother you again," she said. "I know you don't owe me anything." I didn't reply. She stepped onto the bus and didn't look back. I stood there for a moment before getting into my car. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt finished. A few days later, I received a letter from Ethan. Not a text, not a call, a physical letter. It was short. "Mom, I understand now. I see what I let happen. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that. I've moved to a new place. I'm working again, trying to clean up what I helped destroy. I'm sorry." No excuses, no requests. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't write back. Instead, I got up, grabbed my bag, and walked to the local community center. The scholarship committee was holding its first meeting with local schools, and I had volunteered to help with the logistics. By the time I got home, it was late afternoon. I watered the garden, made myself dinner, and turned on the news without really watching it. This was my life now. Simple, quiet, safe. The trust was sealed, the money protected, the legal lines drawn so deep that no one could cross them without leaving a trail of failure behind. I wasn't proud of everything I'd had to do, but I had done it. And now I was free. No more manipulation, no more guilt, just peace, and the knowledge that I'd stopped the wrong people from benefiting from the right man's legacy.